Hi, I'm Kelly, and I'm 35 years old, doing really well in the world of interior design. For the longest time, I thought I had the perfect family. My brother Paul and I have always been close, and we were raised to be tight-knit, always supporting each other. But everything changed when Paul met Maria. One day, Paul called me up, excited as ever. Kelly, you won't believe it. I've met the most amazing woman. He was practically glowing through the phone. I was genuinely happy for him. Paul and I always shared everything, so hearing about this new chapter in his life made me excited too. Fast forward 5 months, and suddenly Paul dropped a bombshell. We're getting married, he announced one morning over coffee. I almost choked on my drink. Married? Paul, you barely know her. I tried to hide my shock, but he was completely head over heels in love with Maria. The wedding was a whirlwind, happening so fast, and before I knew it, I had a new sister-in-law. At first, Maria seemed lovely. She was all smiles, very polite, and appeared to fit right in with the family. But honestly, something about her felt a little off to me. During one of our family dinners, I started noticing small things. For example, she would steer the conversation in strange directions. "Oh, Kelly, you're still single, right? Don't worry. I'm sure you'll find someone eventually." She said it with a smile, but there was always this tiny hint of judgment underneath her words. I tried to ignore it at first, but the comments kept coming. Every time, they were sugar-coated, but there was always a little sting to them. It was as if she was subtly trying to bring me down. One day, I was helping Mom in the kitchen, and I overheard Maria talking to Paul in the next room. "Honey, don't you think Kelly's job is a bit unstable? I'm just concerned about her future," she said. That hit me hard. I had worked so hard to build my business from scratch, and it was thriving. To hear her question my career, like that made my blood boil. Things only got worse from there. At Paul's birthday party, Maria accidentally spilled red wine on my brand new dress. "Oh, I'm so clumsy," she said, laughing. "But don't worry, it probably wasn't that expensive, right?" I smiled through it, but inside, I was furious. It felt intentional, like she was trying to humiliate me. Later that night, I vented to my best friend, Rachel. "Something's not right with Maria," I said, frustrated. Rachel nodded in agreement. "I've noticed it too. The way she looks at you when she thinks no one's watching, it's like she's sizing up the competition," Rachel said. That made me pause. Was I imagining things, or was Maria really trying to get between me and my family? I sighed. But Paul's so happy, and Mom and Dad love her. Am I just overthinking this? Rachel looked at me seriously. "Trust your gut, Kelly. Keep your eyes open." That stuck with me, and from that point on, I started paying more attention. Slowly, I watched as Maria inserted herself deeper and deeper into every part of our family life. She volunteered to help Dad with his finances, constantly offering critiques about how he managed things. She reorganized Mom's entire kitchen, claiming it would be more efficient her way. Little by little, she was changing everything, and no one seemed to notice but me. What worried me most, though, was how Paul started to change. My brother, who used to be so outgoing and full of life, became quieter and more reserved. Whenever we'd talk, he would always defer to Maria's opinion, like he couldn't make a decision without checking with her first. It was so unlike him, and I couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. One afternoon, while out shopping with Mom, I tried to bring it up. "Have you noticed anything strange about Paul lately?" I asked. Mom just smiled and shook her head. "Oh, you're overthinking it, dear. Maria's been wonderful to him." But I wasn't so sure. Something was changing, and I had a sinking feeling that Maria was behind it. I just didn't know how to make anyone see it before it was too late. I decided to talk to my mom about what was happening. "Mom, have you noticed anything different about Paul lately?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. She hesitated for a moment before replying, "Well, he's married now. Change is normal, sweetheart." "But, Mom," I pressed on, "it's like he's not even the same person anymore." Mom gave me a soft smile. "You're just not used to sharing him. Give it some time." I wanted to believe her, but time only made things worse. Every family gathering turned into a battlefield of passive-aggressive comments and tense moments. I tried to keep the peace, biting my tongue when Maria would make one of her snide remarks. But the stress was getting to me. My work started to suffer. My designs weren't coming together, and I found myself losing sleep night after night. One evening, after a particularly rough family dinner where Maria had subtly criticized everything from my outfit to my latest design project, I broke down in my apartment. I couldn't hold it in anymore. The tears flowed, and I felt completely overwhelmed. Just as I was starting to pull myself together, my phone rang. It was Rachel. "Kelly, are you okay? You seemed off at dinner," she asked, her voice full of concern. I couldn't hold back anymore. Everything I had been bottling up for months spilled out. I told her about my suspicions, my fears, and how I felt that Maria was slowly isolating Paul from the rest of us. Rachel listened patiently, and when I finished, she spoke firmly. "Enough is enough, Kelly. It's time to start digging. There's more to Maria than meets the eye, and we're going to find out what it is." As I hung up the phone, I felt a strange mix of determination and dread. I loved my family, and I would do anything to protect them, even if it meant exposing the person who had slowly infiltrated our lives, hiding behind a friendly smile. Little did I know things were about to get much, much worse. The annual family barbecue at my parents' house was supposed to be a day of relaxation and bonding, but instead, it turned into a nightmare that I'll never forget. Everyone was gathered in the backyard. Dad was at the grill, Mom was setting out salads, and Paul was helping Maria with her chair. I was chatting with my cousin when Maria's voice cut through the noise, interrupting us. "Kelly, sweetie, could you grab me a drink? You're not doing anything important, right?" Her words stung, but before I could respond, Mom called everyone to the table to eat. The tension was already building, and as we sat down for the meal, it only got worse. Throughout dinner, Maria kept making little jabs. "This potato salad is delicious, Mom. Much better than the store-bought one Kelly brought last time," she said with a smirk. That was it. I couldn't stay silent any longer. "At least I contribute something, Maria. What exactly do you bring to these gatherings besides criticism?" I shot back. The entire table went silent. Maria's eyes narrowed, and with a cold smile, she responded, "Well, I bring class for one thing. Something you clearly lack." Before I could stop myself, the words flew out of my mouth. "Class? Is that what you call being a manipulative bee?" "Kelly," Paul's voice cut through the tension, shocked by my outburst. But I didn't care anymore. I was tired of biting my tongue, tired of pretending everything was fine. Maria stood up from the table, tears welling up in her eyes. "I can't believe you'd say such things after everything I've done for this family," she cried dramatically before storming off. Paul, of course, followed her without a word. I sat there, fuming, as my parents gave me disappointed looks from across the table. I knew they thought I had crossed a line, but I didn't regret what I had said. Maria had pushed me too far, and I couldn't hold it in any longer. Later, after most of the guests had left, I sat alone in the backyard, replaying the entire evening in my mind. What had I done? Would things ever be the same with Paul again? And more importantly, how would I ever get my family to see what Maria was really doing to us? As I was helping to clean up after the family barbecue, Maria cornered me in the kitchen. Her tone was cold and threatening as she whispered, "Listen here, you little nobody. Paul is mine now, and soon, this whole family will see you for the jealous, pathetic person you are." I was stunned by her words. "You're delusional, Maria," I replied, trying to keep my cool. That's when things escalated. Maria grabbed a fistful of my hair and yanked it hard. "Am I?" she hissed, pulling me toward the living room. "Let's see what Paul thinks about his precious sister now." She dragged me by my hair into the living room, where Paul was sitting, chatting with Dad. "Paul, look what your sister did," Maria cried out, putting on her best act of an innocent victim. "She attacked me." Paul turned around, his eyes wide with shock. "Kelly, what the hell?" he said, disbelief clear in his voice. I tried to explain, but Maria's fake tears and dramatic performance drowned me out. Paul wasn't even listening. His anger was directed at me, not her. "I think you should leave, Kelly," he said quietly but firmly. Humiliated and furious, I grabbed my things and walked out, my heart heavy with frustration. The next day, Rachel came over to find me still in my pajamas, surrounded by empty ice cream containers. I was emotionally drained, replaying the awful scene in my head over and over again. "That's it," Rachel said firmly, looking at the mess around me. "We're not letting her get away with this. It's time to fight back." Over the next week, Rachel and I started digging into Maria's past. We searched for anything that could reveal her true character. It didn't take long before we found inconsistencies in the stories she had told us. The college she claimed to have graduated from had no record of her. The company she said she worked for? It didn't even exist. But the biggest break came by chance. While grabbing coffee one afternoon, I bumped into a woman named Amy. She introduced herself as one of Maria's former coworkers. "Oh, you know Maria?" Amy asked, looking curious. "How is she?" "Still ruining lives, I assume?" My heart raced. "What do you mean by that?" I asked cautiously. Amy sighed and started telling me everything. Maria had a long history of causing chaos wherever she went. She had bullied coworkers, manipulated bosses, and even gotten Amy fired by planting fake evidence of theft. Maria knew exactly how to turn situations to her advantage and hurt those who stood in her way. "Be careful," Amy warned me. "Maria is dangerous when she feels cornered." I left the cafe with my head spinning. I finally had proof that Maria wasn't who she claimed to be. But as I reached for my phone to call Paul, I hesitated. Would he even believe me? Or would it just push him further away from me and closer to Maria? I stood there, torn between protecting my brother and preserving what little remained of our relationship. This was just the beginning. Maria's mask had slipped, and now I had a choice to make. How far was I willing to go to expose the truth? After weeks of debating with myself, I finally made a decision. I couldn't let Maria continue her manipulation without a fight. I made a call to James, a private investigator recommended by one of my clients. We agreed to meet at a quiet coffee shop to discuss everything. "So, you want me to dig into your sister-in-law's past?" James asked, glancing down at the folder I had brought with me. I pushed it across the table, feeling the weight of my decisions settle on my shoulders. "Here's everything I've found so far," I said, my voice steady. "But I need more. I need to know everything." James nodded, picking up the folder and flipping through the papers. "All right, I'll see what I can do." Leaving the cafe, I felt a sense of determination that I hadn't felt in a long time. Maria had messed with the wrong person. I was going to protect my family, no matter what it took. Little did I know, the path ahead was going to be even more difficult than I imagined, but I was ready. It was time to uncover who Maria really was, and I wasn't backing down. As James flipped through the pages of the file I gave him, he let out a low whistle. "Your sister-in-law has more red flags than a parade," he said, shaking his head. "I'll see what I can dig up." 5 weeks later, James called me with news that sent chills down my spine. "Kelly, your sister-in-law isn't just a liar, she's a professional con artist. She has multiple identities and fraud charges in 4 different states. And get this, she's been using your brother's business to launder money." My hands started to tremble as I tried to absorb what he was saying. "How? How is she doing that?" I asked, barely able to get the words out. "Fake invoices, ghost employees, the whole works," James explained. "Your brother's company is a ticking time bomb." I thanked James and hung up the phone, my heart pounding. I had to tell Paul. But how could I break this news to him? Just as I was trying to figure out what to do next, my phone buzzed with a text from my mom. "Family dinner tonight. Maria insists. Please come." Great. Just what I needed. The atmosphere at dinner was tense from the moment I walked in. It was like everyone could feel that something was off, but no one wanted to acknowledge it. Maria was all smiles, playing her usual game. But when her eyes met mine, there was something cold and calculating about her stare. Paul was sitting next to her, looking a bit tired. Maria, in her sweetest voice, suddenly said, "Paul, honey, why don't you tell everyone about our vacation plans?" Paul cleared his throat, looking a little uncomfortable. Well, we're thinking of taking a trip. Maybe an extended one. 5 months or so." I nearly choked on my drink. 5 months. I blurted out. "What about the business?" Maria's smile grew tighter, and she quickly answered for him. "Oh, Paul can run things remotely. Right, sweetie?" she said, giving him a look that made it clear she was pulling the strings. Paul just nodded, like he didn't have a choice. After dinner, I couldn't hold back anymore. I cornered Paul in the kitchen, my heart pounding. Are you sure about this trip? 5 months is a long time, especially with everything going on at work. Paul sighed, looking worn out. Kelly, please. Maria thinks it'll be good for us. We need some time away from everything. I bit my tongue, realizing how deep Maria's control over him had become. It was like he couldn't see what was happening right in front of him. Over the next few days, I kept thinking about how to help Paul. I knew I couldn't do it alone. I reached out to Amy and some of the other victims I had discovered during my investigation into Maria's past. We formed a small support group, sharing our stories and the evidence we had gathered. We need to stop her before she ruins more lives, Amy said one day during one of our meetings. I nodded, a plan starting to form in my mind. I think I know how, I said, feeling a flicker of hope for the first time in a while. For the next week, I worked tirelessly to gather every piece of evidence I could find. I was determined to expose Maria once and for all. But she wasn't stupid. She must have sensed that something was going on. One evening, as I was leaving my office, I walked to my car and found my tire slashed. My heart sank. A note was tucked under the windshield wiper. It read, "Back off, or next time it won't be just the tires." I stood there, frozen, the fear creeping in. I quickly called Rachel, my hands still shaking. Rachel, she knows. I whispered into the phone. Maria knows I'm onto her. Rachel's voice was calm but firm. Then we need to act now, before she can do any more damage. She was right. There was no more time to waste. Maria had played her game for long enough. It was time to expose the truth and protect my brother from the web of lies she had spun. With Rachel by my side, I set the plan into motion. This was it. There was no turning back now. We were going to take Maria down, and nothing was going to stop us. I called my parents, Paul, and the rest of the family. Emergency family meeting tomorrow night. It's about Paul's safety, I said, my voice firm. As I hung up the phone, doubt crept in. Was I doing the right thing? What if this all backfired? But then, I remembered the defeated look in Paul's eyes, how Maria had manipulated him and everyone else around her. No, this had to be done. The next day seemed to drag on forever. I spent the entire day triple-checking all the evidence I had gathered, making sure every detail was solid. I rehearsed what I was going to say over and over again in my head. As the evening approached, my phone buzzed with a message from Paul. Maria's not feeling well. We might not make it. My heart sank. Of course, Maria would try to avoid this. I texted back quickly. Please, Paul. It's important. I wouldn't ask if it wasn't. Hours passed, and I heard nothing. I was starting to give up hope when I heard a car pull up outside my apartment. Peeking out the window, I saw Paul helping Maria out of the car. She looked pale and leaned on him dramatically. It was obvious that she was putting on a show. As Paul and Maria entered my apartment, the tension in the room was thick. My parents, Rachel, Amy, and a few others were already there, waiting. Maria clearly didn't expect this kind of gathering. What's going on? Paul asked, confusion evident in his voice. I took a deep breath, trying to steady my nerves. Paul, everyone, it's time you all knew the truth about Maria. I was calm but determined. This was the moment of truth. Maria's eyes narrowed. Kelly, you're being ridiculous, she snapped, but I didn't let her continue. I pulled out a stack of documents from my bag and held them up. Maria, or should I say Amanda? Or is it Lisa? How many identities do you have? I asked, staring straight at her. Paul's face went pale as I laid out the evidence in front of everyone, the fake names, the fraud charges in different states, the money laundering through his business. Amy and the others shared their stories of how Maria had manipulated them, the lies, the deceit, the way she had hurt so many people. Maria tried to interject, her voice growing hysterical. They're lying, Paul. Baby, you know me, she cried, desperately trying to keep her mask intact. But I could see Paul's disbelief turning into anger. Is it true? Paul asked, his voice shaking. Have you been using my company to launder money? The mask Maria had been wearing for so long finally cracked. Her sweet, innocent demeanor vanished, replaced by cold, hard fury. "You're all idiots," she hissed, her voice dripping with venom. "Paul, you are so easy to manipulate, and the rest of you? Pathetic." The room went silent. Mom gasped in shock, and Dad clenched his fists. Paul looked utterly heartbroken, his world crashing down around him. Maria saw her way out and made a dash for the door, but Amy was quicker. She stepped in front of Maria, blocking her escape. "Not so fast," Amy said firmly. "The police are on their way." The next few hours were a blur. Maria was arrested, screaming and shouting threats as she was led away in handcuffs. She didn't try to hide her true nature anymore. The mask was gone, and all that was left was the real Maria, manipulative and dangerous. Paul sat in silence for the rest of the evening, trying to process everything that had just happened. It was hard to watch him like that, knowing how much pain Maria had caused him. Days turned into weeks. Paul filed for divorce almost immediately. He also worked tirelessly to save his business, trying to undo the damage Maria had done. It was going to be a long road to recovery, but Paul was strong. I knew he would make it through, even if it took time. As for me, I was relieved. We had exposed Maria for who she really was. I had protected my family, and even though it was a painful experience, I knew we were all better off now that Maria was out of our lives for good. In the end, it wasn't just about the evidence or the lies. It was about standing up for what was right, even when it was hard. And I knew that Paul would heal, and our family would become stronger because of it. We had faced the truth, and we had won. I stood by Paul's side through everything. Months later, as we celebrated the successful relaunch of his company, he pulled me aside and said, "Kelly, I'm sorry I didn't believe you sooner. Thank you for not giving up on me." I hugged him tightly, feeling our bond stronger than ever. As I looked around at my family, now free from Maria's toxic influence, I realized how important it is to trust your instincts and stand up to people who try to bring you down. It wasn't easy, but it was worth it. We were free, together, and stronger for having gone through this storm. And that's the end of my story. Now, I have a question for you. If you found out your sibling's spouse was a criminal, would you expose them or stay quiet to protect your sibling's happiness? What's more important, family peace or justice? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. It's a tough decision, and I'm curious to hear what you would do. If you enjoyed this wild story, don't forget to hit that like button.